Let me go ahead and start the recording so we get some of the.
Got it. Okay, you want to start or shall I?
I'll go ahead and start. There we are. All right, hello everybody, and welcome to session number 12 of Conversations in Transportation. I was just talking with Dr. Hummer right before we started. I can't believe we've been doing this 2 full years now, once every 2 months for the last 2 years. We're really excited for this one. It's the first time that we're actually having a full panel of folks in earnest. We've had a couple of guests at the same time before, but not 4. So we're really excited about this one. I'll let Dr. Hummer introduce the entire panel, but before we get started, as usual, the same announcements. If you've been on these before, it's pretty much the same deal each time. If you think of questions that you want to ask the panel at any point, please use the Q&A function in Zoom to submit your questions. It's easier for us to track which questions we've answered and which we haven't. If you use the Q&A function, you can enter those in at any time. We will start transitioning over to the audience questions at about 12:45. So again, use the Q&A function to get those. Second, as usual, everybody who registered for the session will get a link to download their PDH form sometime this afternoon. So look for that in your the same email that you registered for the session with. And lastly, I would like to kind of point out something that you may not be aware of on the NICSite website. If you go ahead, and I'll go ahead and pull it up on the site here so I tell you the right thing, but you can actually go back and view all of our previous sessions. We record all of them, including this one right now, and we upload them to our YouTube page. So if you go to the NICSite website, nicsite.org, and you take a look at events/calendar, there's a link actually to Conversations in Transportation. And there you can find the link to the YouTube playlist. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Hummer.
Thanks, Andy, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. I see a good turnout today, and we have I think, terrific panel. Really looking forward to this one. Thanks to Adam Fisher and the Strategic Initiative Council, and Ty Parham and the Young Members Council for being our sponsors within NICSite. Appreciate that. The purpose of our series is to educate our members through conversation with transportation industry leaders. And today we have 4 of those future leaders with us today. Interesting people and career and topics and such. And we hope to inspire transportation professionals of all ages and job titles. Thanks to the NICSite sponsors, the companies that made this series, and really all of NICSite events possible. Really appreciate that. And with that, I'm going to head into the introductions. So this is a panel of young professionals just starting out their careers in transportation planning and engineering within a couple of years of their graduation. We want to find out why they joined us, what's working, what's not working for them so far, what they expect in the future. We tried to assemble a diverse, in several senses, panel here from all 4 of the major transportation university programs across the state. These folks are exceptional. So in that way, they're maybe not representative of all the young transportation professionals out there, but they're going to try to be, right? And we appreciate that. Hopefully we can gain some insight from them about their cohort. So in alphabetical order, let me start by introducing Sarah Brown. Sarah's a transportation analyst at Kittleson and Associates in Wilmington. Her expertise is equity and mobility justice within transportation planning and research. During her time at Kittleson, Sarah has worked on various equity analysis frameworks and GIS analysis for many engineering, planning, and research projects. Sarah also writes grant proposals, which I'm sure makes you very popular these days. and contributes to a national research projects. She is a MCRP from UNC Chapel Hill and undergraduate degrees in civil engineering and professional writing from Worcester Polytechnic Institute. So Sarah, thanks for joining us. Next up, let me welcome Daniel Collins. Daniel's Transportation Engineer 2 in the NCDOT Traffic Management section in Garner, sitting a few cubicles away from me now as we speak. He works on TIP projects and traffic impact analyses in the central region of the state. He reviews traffic analyses that others perform, and he does plenty of analyses of his own on Syncro and other software. Daniel's an engineering graduate from North Carolina A&T. He was born and raised in Durham and currently runs a nonprofit in his downtime. So thanks, Daniel. Next up, let's meet Adam Schmidt. Adam's a third-year PhD student in the Department of Civil Construction and Environmental Engineering at NC State, where his research focuses on the social and economic impacts of public transportation projects. He completed his Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering at NC State and previously interned for Kimley Horn and Associates here in Raleigh. Adam's a recipient of a US DOT Dwight David Eisenhower Graduate Transportation Fellowship. I got that back in my day too, so welcome to the club, Adam, which is selected from a national applicant pool by FHWA for research and leadership potential in the transportation industry. So great to see you, Adam. And finally, we appreciate Samantha Shefty joining us. Sam is a recent graduate of UNC at Charlotte, where she obtained her Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering with focus in geo-environmental studies. And she now works for Ramey Kemp Associates as a hydraulic associate. In this role, she covers drainage design, erosion control designs for North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. She began her career in transportation as an intern working at the Charlotte Douglas International Airport as a resident project representative for transportation aviation firm, and was able to gain in-field knowledge of the transportation industry. So Sam, thanks for joining us as well. Once again, I think a really distinguished panel here. Really appreciate all of you being here. So let's start with the big one. Why did you choose a career in transportation? And Sarah, alphabetically, let's start with you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. And for me, I kind of stumbled into transportation, actually. So I was doing a capstone project in my undergrad for civil, and I really wanted to do a project for the community, and got connected with a community development center in Worcester, Massachusetts, where I went to school. And they really wanted me to focus on improving walking conditions for an elementary school in a low-income, historically Black neighborhood in Worcester. And so that's how I kind of came into transportation, like through something that the community expressed was their need. And I kind of, spent my time as an undergrad in my senior year, delivering a project for them and doing a tactical urbanism project with them. And that's kind of how I got to know the different ways that transportation intersects with different social justice issues and community. And it was a really insightful project for me. And then I got connected to the UNC Highway Safety Research Center through that tactical urbanism work, and ended up moving down to North Carolina before grad school to work with them. And then everything else fell into place. So that's kind of how I came to transportation.
We'll take stumbling. I think we'd like a plan but we'll take stumbling too. That works. So great, Sarah. Thank you. Daniel, how about you? How'd you find transportation?
Good afternoon. So I kind of fell into transportation. I actually didn't major in civil engineering. I actually did industrial and systems engineering. Both of my older brothers are engineers, and I kind of followed in their footsteps. But how I fell into the transportation aspect, I love cars. I have a motorcycle, I have a Challenger, and I've always been intrigued with how people design roadways and why they design it the way they do, and they should probably put a signal here, or what were they thinking not putting a signal here? And so I've always kind of had this love relationship with roads and stuff from afar. And I actually just one day after I graduated, decided to apply for NCDOT, and it's kind of been my story ever since, going through the construction and maintenance and actually seeing all the behind the scenes stuff and how the final product actually gets put together. And it's a really, really long process that a lot of people don't realize that, oh, they're just paving road. Why isn't this, a 2-day process when actually this is years in the making, and it's more than just throwing out some concrete and some asphalt. So
there's a couple of good themes there. Your siblings, your brothers' influence, and then you kind of had that inkling all along, or asking those questions all along. So
yeah,
that's cool. Yep,
yeah.
thanks. Adam, how about you?
Yeah, and good afternoon, everybody. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I think when I was like late middle school, high school, I realized I was like really interested in public policy and like how do we solve these big societal issues. But I knew I really liked math and I didn't really like politics. And so I wanted a way to be like loosely involved in sort of like public projects without the policy side or without the politics side. So early on in college, like undergrad, I realized civil engineering was kind of a good way to deal with public projects without necessarily having, well, I thought at the time without necessarily having to deal with politics. I've learned since then. And I randomly, my sophomore year, volunteered at this clinic that provided healthcare services to people who exist in the coverage gap. Like they don't have Medicare or Medicaid, but they don't have private insurance. And people would always miss appointments because the clinic didn't have a bus stop near it. And most of the clients they serve don't have their own source of transportation. And so it clicked for me that like transportation access is this thing that touches like every part of our lives. And I realized that was sort of the way to marry my interests in like public policy and how do we solve like big structural systemic issues with, I really like math and want to keep doing math stuff. And so for me, it all just kind of clicked then.
Awesome. Yeah, and the political angle there too is a really interesting one, isn't it? We some of us would like to stay far away, but it's right there. We work for politicians in the end, so it's always there. But interesting. Thanks, Adam. Sam, finally, how about you?
Yeah, thanks again for having me. So kind of growing up, kind of a different one. When we would be driving, you're taking your family road trip and all that, and then you're stuck in traffic because of construction or whatnot. I would roll down the window in the back seat and wave at the construction people and embarrass my parents, like halfway down the line. But it was the built environment things, just like growing up, that just always fascinated me. I grew up in Raleigh, and that's just always something, always construction, always going. When you grow up more like city-esque, you see it a lot. And that was just really fascinating to me. And then more growing up, just kind of found, one with the numbers and less with the words in some cases, and just kind of all fell into place of like, okay, well, this thing really piques my interest, but how do you apply that, towards longevity of like a career and stuff like that? And that's how civil just kind of fell into place. Just the built environment just always kind of inspired me. So
there's a message there. The roads are really fascinating, at least for some of us. So if we're looking to in turn how to influence the next generation, let's try to play that up a little bit when we can with those out there that have that same fascination. So excellent, thanks. On to the next sort of part of your biography, I guess. But why did you choose your university? So here, let's start out with Daniel on that one, and then move down the list. So Daniel, why A&T?
Sure. So I chose North Carolina A&T. 2 reasons. The first, both of my older brothers went there, so they're 6 and 9 years older than me. So for the most part, I kind of knew I liked following in their footsteps, and I love the school, I love the environment. So that's kind of the first part. The second part is kind of the cultural part of it. With A&T being HBCU, which is a historically Black college or university, the culture is a little bit more tailored to me, my opinion, towards African Americans, and that's kind of why I chose A&T. And those two were really the reasons why I chose where I went to.
That's good. It's funny. My siblings always swore they did not want to go where I went. So it's funny that you had the opposite. Thanks. Adam, why'd you choose state?
Yeah, I'm from North Carolina, so like I wanted to stay relatively close to home. The triangle was like far enough from my parents that I could have some breathing space, but also not too far away. My parents are from northeastern North Carolina, so Charlotte or A&T was a little bit more of a hike. And I ultimately ended up deciding between UNC Chapel Hill and NC State, and I thought I would want to do some kind of engineering, but probably not biomedical. And so NC State was just sort of the natural fit for me.
Yep, that makes sense. Kind of a familiar story, I'm sure, with a lot of people on the call here. Yep, good. Sam, how about Charlotte?
Yeah, so I feel like that's a little location different wise. But so growing up in Raleigh, I grew up in downtown Raleigh. My parents had a house like right on the cusp of the city, really close to NC State's campus, location wise and stuff. And a lot of events are held there and things like that. It was just a lot for me. Like growing up right next to it, being next to it all the time, it was very much just like, I see it every day. Like this is nothing new. It just didn't feel like it's something new to me. So that's one of the bigger reasons for Charlotte, was just because I grew up in that area. But Charlotte's program being so new really inspired me. It was just like, well, I feel like I can have a bigger implement in like being a part of that building process with this program being brand new. So that really spoke to me. And then, stayed here for work because I just really liked the city compared to kind of where I grew up. And just biggest thing was like program development spoke to me.
Charlotte's campus is amazing to me when I get back there and see it, like, wow, where did this thing come from? And it's growing so fast.
Gross.
And so big. Yeah.
You gotta like brick though.
You do. Well, NC State gives you a run for the brick money there, though.
Oh yeah. Brick industry is thriving in this state.
For sure that. Thanks. And Sarah, how about UNC?
Yeah, I mean, for Chapel Hill, for what I was going for the master's in City and Regional Planning, Chapel Hill is a top program in the country. So, I mean, I had done research on that, and so I had known, and I had looked into that school. But I also, like I mentioned before, I was working with the UNC Highway Safety Research Center and for about 9 months before grad school. And I just really liked them, and I really enjoyed working with them. And when I was in Massachusetts, I didn't really have like a transportation community, I would say. I didn't like take too many transportation classes or like was super involved in any like advocacy work there. But in North Carolina, a lot of that changed, and I didn't really want to just lose that community and start up somewhere else. So yeah, I decided to stay and get to know a lot of people throughout North Carolina. Transportation is very small in North Carolina, as you'll come to find out. So yeah, it's just been really nice to like grow deeper connections with folks here. So yeah.
Good. Yeah, that's a really good comment. I think about the profession is relatively small. When you get down to it, you start meeting people and then recognizing. And I had a lunch last week, 2 weeks ago, with a person I met during my graduate research fellowship at Federal Highway, and I got to thinking about it. It's like that's somebody I've known probably longer in my life than almost anybody except my siblings and my mother. I mean, you make these relationships, and if you all stay in the state, you're going to know each other for decades to come. It's really, it's really good. So, yep. Thanks. Let's talk a minute about grad school and change up the order a little bit here. Start with Sarah. Why you chose a master's program to pursue your profession?
Yeah, well, I mean, even from high school, I always knew I wanted to do planning, and I always knew it was like down the line. But I think what was so exciting about it was being able to be totally immersed in a subject topic and be with people who cared about the same things. And also reflecting back on grad school, I think I realize now that like I just grew so much more as a person and as a professional. And sometimes it's not even about the classes or the content or the assignments, but it's how you strategize and how you learn from other people, and you just soak it all in, and you take advantage of all of the resources that a university can give you. And I also love research, and I was just given a lot more space to explore and be really creative and really dive into a specific topic area on mobility justice and transportation equity. Yeah, I think reflecting back, yeah, I mean, I always wanted to go to grad school, so I'm very fortunate that that was an option for me, and I was able to do that going straight through to undergrad. But yeah, really about the connections and the people and how I grew. Yeah, was a really good choice for me.
Excellent. Giving people space, that's not something that a lot of agencies and companies are really well known for. That's something that I think we struggle here at DOT with doing that. So I hear that. And Adam, you were on, of course, to PhD school. So why that decision?
Yeah, I think, and this will sound a little crazy, I kind of stumbled into a PhD program. Like I never had any aspirations to go to grad school. And I mentioned a little bit ago why I chose NC State for undergrad, but when I was an undergrad, my current advisor, so the professor I do most of my research work with, came and guest lectured for one of my classes and talked about her research on like the social and economic impacts of transportation projects, mostly public transit. And that was really cool to me. And I went and talked to her and said, like, do you have a research lab? Like, can I be an undergrad researcher? I'd love to just learn more about this. And she let me work with her as an undergrad. And at some point she said, what if you stayed for a master's program? And I said, okay, if it's paid for, if I can work on the research project and all that, why not? And then at one point she said, what if you stayed for a PhD program? And I was still having fun. I really liked the opportunity, like Sarah said, to just kind of have space to explore and to get to work on really interesting questions and stuff that people want to know more about, but we don't necessarily know about right now. And originally I started in the master's program. I realized I was having fun though, and I didn't feel like I was going to have the time to answer all the questions I wanted to answer if I just finished with the master's. And so ultimately I decided to stay for the PhD. I mentioned why I chose State for undergrad, but specifically for grad, I chose to stay at NC State because the research I do on social and economic impacts of transit projects doesn't normally live in an engineering department. It normally lives in like a planning department or economics or geography or something like that. But I think doing that work in the engineering department, a civil engineering department with engineering faculty, kind of gives me a different perspective on that problem. And it also helps me figure out how to translate what I'm doing in my research work to stuff that I could talk to professional engineers about, to talk to planners about, and potentially talk to policymakers about in a way that I wouldn't necessarily have gotten if I had gone to like an econ department or geography or planning or something like that. So it's been fun. It is kind of a slog to stay for a while, but I think the opportunity and the flexibility to kind of look into things that you think are really interesting and get paid, albeit not a whole lot, but get paid to learn is something that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's on my list of questions later is how can you afford to live on the stipend, but we'll get to that in a bit. So Sam and Daniel, you chose otherwise, headed right out after your bachelor's degree to go get a job with a company or an agency. So Sam, why not grad school?
Yeah, so UNC Charlotte has, not super familiar with other universities, so it may be a more universal thing, but have an early master's entry program for engineering, and I know some the other degrees as well. So I chose to take that route during my undergrad. So I graduated with my undergrad, was about half of my master's complete. And it's kind of after that, I just decided it wasn't for me at that time. I've considered a lot going back because those credits do hold for a little while, but I've just been super on the fence about it because this just isn't a degree program out there that's something that piques my interest enough to want to like go back to dedicating myself to that kind of degree thing. So maybe I'll find my super niche area in the industry that like really piques my interest in the next couple of years, and then that'll all change. But my biggest convincer point was pricing had some to do with it, and then just wanted to kind of see what's out there in terms of industry before I like kind of, I don't want to say like convince myself of a very specific thing I want to study, but if one of those, like if I didn't have it now, then like maybe I shouldn't try to like focus too hard on it and just pursue what that's actually like interesting to me at the time.
And if you probably know, but doing a part-time graduate degree is really difficult. so much admiration for people that managed to finish that way. Holy mackerel. I couldn't do it, but those that did, so much admiration. So yeah, good, Sam. Thanks. And finally, Daniel, you went right on from bachelor's to working world.
Yeah. So for me, I kind of share the same sentiment as Sam a little bit. I didn't really, at the moment or currently, really see the value in going to get a master's. And maybe that could change, but to speak from an ROI point of view, I think in an engineer, you don't really need a master's degree or a PhD to where you can actually have a really good living and make some good money for yourself. So that was really the way I was looking at it is, it was a good ROI. You get a bachelor's and you can make pretty good money without having to go get a higher education.
That is certainly true. Yep. People retiring out of DOT that we know, going to retirement ceremony on Thursday after 30 years, and they're going to do really well, financially and work life and all that kind of stuff. It sets up well.
Yeah.
So it's certainly point of view too. Very good. Good. Thank you all. Several of you kind of hit on this a little bit, but let's talk more about, why you chose to work in North Carolina of all the 50 states. And Adam, I think you kind of hit that already, but anything else you want to add on that aspect as far as the geography?
I think for me, I'm from North Carolina, and so it's cool. I really appreciate the chance to do research. Like a lot of my research is on the Charlotte Light Rail, to look at specific projects that are in North Carolina. Just because I think it's helpful for engineers, planners, and policymakers to know what the impacts of transit projects are for us in our state. And so it's nice to do research that's kind of close to home and about communities that I care about a lot.
Good. Sam, next, why'd you want to stay in North Carolina?
Yeah, so I wasn't born here. Definitely did a lot of growing up here, but wasn't born here. Visited a lot of other family, other places, but North Carolina really spoke to me because you get a lot of everything. You get the coast and you get the mountains, and you get your more central Piedmont, or you get your big city vibes. Like you get a lot of it. So if you're doing coastal water research work with transportation and flooding stuff, and you're just wow, this is not for me, you can do a 180 and start looking at how you're going to handle that situation. But in the mountains and things like that, you have the variety before you feel like you're wow, this is just not for me, I have to go somewhere else to figure out what I want. But you get that variety by just staying here. So it's one of the big perks of this job is we work on all parts of the state and get to see all those aspects. So keeps it interesting.
I say that about my job too. I get to see all 100 counties, right? And that's good. They're good. They're good counties. So Sarah, you kind of touched on this already, but anything you want to add about, you're the one in the group that sort of made the decision to move here. So anything else?
Yeah. Like I said, I really liked the community and the professional organizations I found here. And also, I do just like the South, and my specialty, we can get into this later, is more on the transportation equity side. And I am someone who does like the politics, likes getting into the conversations about human rights. And there's a lot of things to push forward in the state and a lot of communities that deserve to be prioritized. So being in the South and in North Carolina, I've found there's a lot of space to do that and push those conversations forward.
Interesting state politically, isn't it? And Daniel, same question. You chose to stay. So what was the attraction?
So being born and raised in Durham, I'm very familiar with the area, and then working in Raleigh, Garner specifically. I think, like others have said, North Carolina has some of everything. It doesn't get super hot here. Doesn't get super cold. We'll get snow down, and that's perfectly fine with me. Buried in snow, You can go to the beach and then that same weekend be in the mountains, which I think is really cool because you can't really say that about many other states. And the people here are pretty progressive, generally speaking, in the more, I guess, urban areas. But you do have some country parts of the state where if you want to go get boiled peanuts or something, you can. So you get like some of everything. I really like that being from here, and that's kind of why I wanted to stay here.
That's true. Yep. Yep. Where Sam is at there, it's a real big city feeling, but you don't have to go far out to kind of get into the country. That's good. Good. Let's each of you chose a quite different specialty area. So let's talk about that within transportation. Let's start with Sam, sort of in the
Yeah.
hydraulics.
Yeah, so when I started college, I was convinced that I was like transportation, roadway, like traffic, like this is my thing. And then like the path just really spoke to me, kept drawing me back with how things worked and stuff. But took my first like intro to transportation 101 course, and I was so bad at it. I was just so terrible at it. And I was like, wow, okay, so maybe this isn't for me. So I found myself kind of digging more into the environmental sides of things and like water resource management studies, but never really lost the interest in it, just knew that like maybe sitting there and doing that was not meant for me. So kind of started finding paths where the two areas crossed as I, talked to industry leaders and just different things like that. Then the role I serve now is really encompasses both factors of that, with like handling some of the hydraulics and drainage skills that I have been able to get while implementing factors of transportation to keep those interest peaks. So slowly getting less terrible at understanding the roadway stuff, but it was a harsh realization right at the get-go, but pivoted for the better, I think.
Thanks, Sam. That brings me back to a memory too. I hated my first transportation class. What a kind of a crashing disappointment. Kind of built back up after that. But I remember that feeling. I was like, "Is this all there is?"
Like, are they so bad at this? Yeah, I was like, really?
Good. Thanks, Sarah. How about you? How'd you get in your specialty?
I feel like I'm still learning what my specialty is, but I do focus on a lot of transportation equity work through planning and through research. And I think research interests me so much. I think I touched on this before, the creative aspects and being able to really ask very interesting questions and really go at something can be very fun. But I think, why I like transportation equity work and transportation is it's so intersectional. And I've just met a lot of people like in the equity space who are just so innovative and caring and kind people that really just inspire me because they seek to repair harms and aren't afraid to talk about them, aren't afraid to recognize them, whether they're historical or current injustices. And so with mobility justice, we really talk about that safety and equitable mobility. It talks about design, it talks about construction, but it also talks about cultural and discriminatory and socioeconomic barriers to transportation, to access and comfort and to safety. And so when we really talk about shifting from focusing on the modes and we start focusing on the people that are walking, the people who are biking and taking transit and driving, it becomes something different and we can really center the voices of marginalized communities. And with transportation, it touches everything. And so there is just a lot of creative people that really use biking to create community mobility rituals and create socialization to reduce violence and to reduce harm by really creating a cohesive, caring community. And so, yeah, I could nerd out about it forever, about all of the cool things that I've seen in transportation that people have done. But I would also say another specialty area is I do a lot of qualitative work in research. So I work with a lot of interview data, text data, written data, and I've been able to, in grad school, I did a lot of that, but at Kittleson, I've been able to do a lot of that too, and really just make very interesting reports and findings and actually quantify things that people have talked about and people have said and have made really interesting deliverables from that. And so I like growing in more of the qualitative side and really using quotes and visuals to talk about data and storytelling.
Excellent. That's why I wanted to have this conversation, because some of those aspects that you're talking about will be new to me, and I expect new to a lot of the people listening in here today. So thank you for bringing that. Really interesting. Daniel, how'd you get into congestion?
Sure. So, as many of you guys know, the DOT umbrella is so huge. Really, if you want to do anything from being out in the field, being in the office, you know, they kind of have a job for you. And specifically, how I ended up in congestion, I was on the Transportation Engineering Associate Program, or TEA program, and just going around seeing which units I liked, and you get a little bit of trying to find yourself and what really suits you and what units you like and blah, blah, blah. And I ended up in congestion, and the group was just so amazing, and, you know, everybody was super intelligent. And I actually like what we do, you know, from capacity analysis and actually looking at, you know, how we can make this intersection better. Should we add a right turn lane here? Should we even recently now, you know, the roundabouts, that's a really big thing in North Carolina, and road diets. And it's really interesting because you really get a sense of what you're doing is directly affecting the roads you drive on. So it's really cool to say, like, hey, I looked at a project here and I know what's going to happen, and what you're doing really does affect day-to-day stuff. And I think that's just really cool.
So yeah, and that Daniel, what you're describing there is a path I think several of our listeners will resonate to. The TEA program going strong, and the sort of breadth of DOT and the chance to pick something from among that. So, and I think you froze up there too. So I took that as a chance to jump in. Sorry about that. Adam, how about how'd you end up in your specialty? Again, I think you touched on this a little bit, but anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I think I'm going to call what I do like transportation equity too. I know that's kind of like a big umbrella, and it's also kind of a buzzword lately, but I look at like, how do neighborhood price, like how the price of houses in neighborhoods change after transit arrives? What are the kinds of people that are moving in and out of the neighborhoods? And I look at that with like census data or household level data and that kind of thing. And I think in sort of my intro transportation classes, Sam kind of alluded to that. Like, I realized I was really bad at traffic stuff and I didn't want to do that. But I was really interested in like, how do communities change when we build transit projects or new transportation projects? And it didn't feel like we had a lot of good answers, like other than like, oh, this happened in this one place, this happened in this one place. And we didn't really have a sense of like, what are the policies that we could enact to sort of change those outcomes to get something we might want a little bit more. And so when I tried to find like research answers to that, I realized there was a lot of noise. Like, nobody had a super clear picture of like, this is the thing you need to do. And as I've done my research, I've realized it is really complicated and it is hard to get a straight answer on that. But I saw it as an area that would be really important, like as we started to have a larger conversation about how the effects of transportation impact our communities. And I wanted eventually my research to be able to inform policymakers, engineers, and planners so that we can try to achieve the outcomes we want. And so for me, it was an area that I thought would be relevant, like in the future. It was upcoming, it was really interesting, and I thought it was really important because it does kind of affect all aspects of our society. And I don't want transportation to be bad. Like, I want us to be able to figure out how to get the impacts we want from these projects and make sure communities aren't displaced and that kind of thing. And so it kind of led me to where I am right now.
Excellent. And all four of you had kind of that similar theme of you saw a problem when you wanted to solve it, help fix it. That's very cool. I was hoping to see some of that. I thought I saw it there. Excellent. Ron, thanks for entering a question in the Q&A. Please do that for everybody listening. If you've got something that you want me to turn around to our panelists here, by all means. But Ron, you anticipated the next question I was actually going to ask. So thanks so much. I love when that happens. And I think, Sarah, you're up first on this one, and we'll go around. Ron asks, after moving into your specialty, were there any surprises that you encountered? And I would say after moving into specialty and into your company or your agency as well, what surprised you since you've joined the workforce?
Yeah, I mean, one big thing that sticks out to me is like in grad school, I've focused a lot on like soft skills. I don't think that's the appropriate word, but I focused a lot on like negotiation and facilitation and conflict resolution. And it was just building up skills to be a better team member, a better project manager, just trying to learn how to be a better member of society and just build different skills, I guess. And then I think coming to Kittleson, moral of the story is I didn't focus on a lot of technical aspects in grad school. I barely touched GIS. I was kind of, that wasn't really my thing at the time. And that's a decision I made. But when I came to Kittleson, like I ended up doing a lot of GIS work, and I found that I do really like it because just being able to see the different ways you can visualize and analyze things and getting to learn how to have autonomy and be able to do those has made my transportation equity research like just a lot stronger. Like to what Adam was saying, just working with census data and being able to do different types of analyses on that and comment on things. I've just been having a lot of fun like exploring more of the technical side of things, and it's just been helping me deepen my understanding of the world and understanding of what I can bring to a team and what I can comment on. And how I can be creative.
That's excellent. Yeah, no bachelor's, master's, PhD program, any kind of training can perfectly prepare you, right? You got to be flexible for what comes next. So that's awesome, Sarah. Thanks. Daniel, what surprised you so far?
I think the biggest surprise that I've noticed since, especially working in congestion, but DOT as a whole, is just how political things are. And I wasn't really familiar with that. And outside looking in, you just assume like, oh yeah, we're doing this because of this, and this is going to be best for everybody. And you come to find out you have to be really gentle with things, and you have to explain things a certain way because you don't want to step on any toes. And we are public service at the end of the day, but you find out really soon that you have to word things and you have to be really, really smooth about how you do things. And that was honestly the biggest surprise to me, was just how, you gotta move a certain way. But it's been a learning process, but it's definitely very interesting. That's my biggest surprise.
That's awesome. Can't get that for the next 40 years, I'm afraid, but it's okay. It seems like you're rolling with it pretty well. Adam, what surprises so far for you?
I think one thing that I've been surprised by when I came into this, my research area, social and economic impacts, sort of under the assumption that there's a general consensus that we want communities to stay together. We want to provide people access to transportation without displacing them. And we want to do that kind of thing. And I've realized not everyone feels that way. Some people think transit is a tool to push certain communities out or to completely change the character of neighborhoods. And so I think that's kind of been a reality check for me, is especially in the academic circle, there's kind of some agreement on that. But then outside of the academic circle, you have to completely change the way, kind of like Daniel was saying, be careful about how you say stuff and figure out how to communicate to specific audiences and terms that they are willing to hear. And so that's been sort of a challenge, and one that I think I've been fortunate to practice, just because I present to academic audiences sometimes, but I also present to people who aren't academics at other conferences and that kind of thing. And so it's been a way to kind of build up that skill set. And then I think that's sort of my specialty area. Something about grad school specifically that I think has surprised me in a good way is just how much how autonomous I am. I sort of check in with my advisor once a week, see how I'm doing, what problems I'm having, sort of what I'm thinking. And then pretty much all my other time is mine, which is really scary at first. And then it's really cool because you get to, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, you can. And you can spend a whole week just looking at this one specific part of like a new method or something like that. And so there's a lot of time to really learn about things that are interesting to you and then figure out ways to apply it to your research and solve problems using that. I thought grad school would be a little bit more like a job where it's like more kind of guided. There's some guardrails to keep you on track. But I think it is pretty self-driven. And originally that was really scary, but I've come to really enjoy that throughout my time in my program.
It develops some discipline too, right? You got to be careful that you don't get too far down that rabbit hole.
Well, no, and that's like, I am very excited to use that in like my next role, because I think that's something I've gotten good at in grad school. It's like, at what point do you have to realize like you got to cut something loose and move on? You spent enough time on this, because in grad school it is easy to spend so much time on one thing that maybe it's not worth it in the end.
Yep. Great. And Sam, finally, surprises?
Yeah, I think for me the big surprise was pace. Just kind of coming out of degree and then straight into, doing industry stuff. I think the pace can definitely be a little bit shocking, just kind of like buckle in. The pace, but also with the pace, the willingness of the people to help you like keep up with the pace has been a really great surprise. I think sometimes in school and stuff, when you have that base knowledge of just like you feel very on your own with a lot of stuff, and maybe you kind of get in your own head that you're on your own with a lot of stuff too, and you just want to meet the deadlines and be done with it, but that's not quite the reality in industry, right? So just the willingness of other people to help has been the biggest surprise and best surprise, I guess you could say.
That's awesome, isn't it? Really, really heartening to have good teammates ready to
Absolutely
pull the rope with you. Yeah, very, very good. Matthew asked a good question in the Q&A. Again, pretty much anticipating where I was headed next. What topic or area of interest do you see coming in the future that's going to propel the transportation field and sort of influence your career path? So I had on my list here, is it automated vehicle, electric vehicle, more something political? What do you see happening, sort of mega trend that's going to affect you and your work? So Daniel, I think you're on the hot seat for this one first. What are you looking at?
I think the more autonomy becomes more affordable and for everybody, I think that's going to be a really big thing for us, because, working at congestion, we're looking at directly, how do we mitigate? How do we help traffic flow better? How do we help people get from A to B? And if we can somehow integrate, autonomy in how we're doing things and having cars drive as efficiently as possible, I think that's going to help us on the back end when we're designing things where we know, hey, if we get X amount of cars through here, it'll do this, this, and this. So I definitely think autonomy is the big thing for us. And even electric vehicles, having less cars on the roadway, peak hours, and that's kind of a separate thing. But I would definitely say autonomy and how we're going in that direction.
Excellent. Thanks, Daniel. Adam, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily a new idea, but there's something that's sort of starting to come back up in like social and economic research of transportation stuff called value capture. The idea that like if you build this new transit line or highway or something like that, the people that live close to it are going to benefit from it. So what if there was like a special tax zone that allowed you to collect a little bit of revenue to help pay for the transportation project? But I think people are now starting to tie like the idea of value capture to like affordable housing and other efforts that are meant to stop and slow gentrification. So like, what if we're able to take people who can't afford to live in these neighborhoods and benefit from the new transit line to then help people who might get priced out of the neighborhood, make sure that they can continue to live there, that kind of thing. Another one that I think is kind of emerging in the transit space is microtransit. So what if you basically had an Uber-like service instead of a fixed route public transit line? So transit riders could call like a minivan from their phone and it would come and pick them up and take them to where they want to go. I don't think that's going to take off really in like urbanized areas, but especially in like smaller communities where it's really expensive to run a transit service. There's some stuff, I think it's coming out of like Wilson, and Rocky Mount is looking at a pilot trying to see if that could be a better replacement for fixed route service so that they can still serve all their customers and riders without necessarily having to pay for a fixed route service.
Excellent. Daniel and Adam, both, it strikes me with your answers that if you'd asked me back in 1980 something, when I was a young engineer, I might have said these same things. And, here we are 30 plus years later. Maybe you guys will actually see them. Maybe they actually will come to fruition and kind of, it'll be your job to make these things happen. We'll see. Sam, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, for me, one thing that maybe this is just a product of living in Charlotte. I think public transit is really going to start taking off in more cities like it does for some other countries, but for like the United States. And I think that's going to propel transportation on that side of things. But, then there's the fear of like, what's going to happen with the other side of like existing infrastructure things. So I think if that doesn't end up happening with like a bigger push on public transit, like we see some other places starts to happen here for us, it's going to be, well, maybe less money gets put towards building new things that don't necessarily relate to public transit, but keeping up what we currently have. So I think that'll, while it's a kind of a different path, we'll still kind of propel it towards the future of just maintaining what we have, because there is quite a bit to maintain still. So.
Yeah. And Charlotte's really started to make that transition, hasn't it? Thanks. And Sarah, finally, what do you see?
Yeah, so to Adam's point, definitely stuff about the microtransit. At Kittleson, we've been working with NCDOT Integrated Mobility Division to help them with their transit visioning workshops, where we got a lot of the transit agency leadership across the state to come vision and talk about goals, but also challenges and opportunities that they see. And we wrote a report that's kind of summarizing all of the findings that we got. But yeah, a lot of the agencies in North Carolina are rural, and a lot we're talking about microtransit service and also on-demand service. So, the buzz about like those emerging technologies, is not lost on the rural transit providers in North Carolina. So I think that will be really exciting. Also, rail in North Carolina, at Kittleson, we're also working on the S-Line transit-oriented development study, and that's where NCDOT is looking to put high-performing passenger rail on the S-Line, which is a line that connects, in North Carolina at least, from Sanford through Raleigh and then all the way up to Norlina. And so those conversations are becoming very real with a lot of the federal grant funding that we are getting from this administration, and that's super exciting. Also, I think anti-displacement work and talking more about gentrification, as that is never ending and never stopping. And just, we have to be more innovative, and we need to do more on the policy side, on the engineering side. We need to figure out something with anti-displacement. And also research on automated enforcement as well. I'm in a lot of conversations around that. And also, I will say, I'll just plug that, like, yes, technology is exciting, but let's make sure that we are still prioritizing Black communities and communities of color and low-income communities, and making reparations to those communities for the harms that we have done before we go and we spend all our money on flashy technology and spend money in the white and affluent communities. And so let's continue to write those checks, and let's continue to prioritize those communities and make those technology investments in those communities alongside of them and for them. So let's just be intentional and impeccable with our funding and our money.
Great. Yeah, thanks. On the S-Line, I'm so looking forward to that. Raleigh to Richmond, and I think Raleigh joins the Northeast Corridor when we get that, and it really gonna change this place. So interesting, all four of you, thanks. Adam Fisher, one of our sponsors, tossed in a couple good ones, and we got just a couple minutes left, so maybe quick answer around the room. Adam, what do you want to be doing in 5 years?
I think 5 years is like a tough timeline. Like 7 or 8, I have a better idea, and like 2 or 3.
7 or 8, then, if you wish. That's okay.
I think eventually I want to help translate research stuff to policymakers and engineers and planners. So I think 5 years down the line, I probably want to be finishing up like the work experience to get my PE, maybe an AICP, so that I can prove to people I'm not like a data kook because I got a PhD, but I can do like the engineering design work and the community engagement work to really make projects happen too.
Don't want to be a data kook. No, no. Appreciate that. Sam, what do you?
Yeah, kind of rapid fire answer, PE path for sure. And then just being able to kind of oversee a lot more implementation of kind of the design work and stuff like that, especially on like the hydro and EC side, a little different than just like the actual like super hardcore roadway design itself. So
Sam, that's awesome. It's going to be a really cool moment when you see one of your projects, they actually cut the ribbon.
oh, can't wait.
That's I'm looking forward to that too, actually. That terrific. Sarah, what do you think about 5 years or so from now?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I think I'm definitely, I really like consulting work, and I like kind of building up to be a project manager, or, you know, fill some of those other roles outside of being a younger staff and a younger analyst. But also, yeah, continuing to explore research, and I think ideally working with mobility justice advocates and making really cool work that hasn't been done before, and really breaking barriers between academia and planning and advocacy, because we're all kind of fighting for the same thing. And so let's get together and let's do something cool. So I would hope in 5 years I would have something, a cool collaboration.
Break down those silos. Yeah, that'd be awesome. And Daniel, where do you want to be in 5 years? Are you going to come for this job, or where are you headed?
I wish, right? 5 years, I hope to, to get my P the state, and hopefully I'm still at congestion. I like where I'm at, so hopefully I'm still here.
Good. We hope so too. There is a nice path for promotion within DOT. That's one of the good things. Got 2 minutes left, so quick final thoughts from each of you. Are you optimistic about the transportation profession headed out into the future? I mean, you chose us, but do you remain optimistic? So I think, Adam, we're going to start with you and then head around the room, and yeah, keep it quick, please.
Yeah, I think I'm with Sarah in that there are like a lot of exciting sort of things in front of us, but that's also like there are still a lot of problems that we haven't really solved from before. And so figuring out how to prioritize like trying new things while fixing problems that we never fixed before is going to continue to be something we have to do. Sometimes all the shiny things scare me just because there are a lot of them and they seem really shiny, but I'm hopeful that we can, especially with like all the money flowing into the industry now from the infrastructure bill and stuff like that, we can start to tackle some of the historical wrongs and like think critically about what we want our next step to be.
Awesome. Sam, how about you? Optimistic?
Yeah, definitely really optimistic, especially if people can keep seeing the support system that's getting built up in the industry and just like the built environment, all aspects of it, from road to other, keep seeing the support system of people who've done the stuff in the past, teaching it to the new people in the past to maybe help, avoid certain things and just keep it progress moving, but definitely feeling really optimistic, especially with the support systems that are getting built within the industry.
That's great. Great to hear that. Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, I'm also feeling optimistic, like all my fellow panelists. Yeah, I think the things that I was kind of saying before, yeah, continue to fight to improve the quality of life and improve life outcomes for the communities that you serve. And I'm seeing the folks who are going through grad school and seeing folks who are young professionals, at least in North Carolina, like are amazing and really fighting for things that I'm really proud to work on. And so I'm really excited for where DOT is going in the industry. And I'm feeling really good about things.
That's what it's all about, isn't it? It's the people in the profession, the people around you. Daniel, you get the last word. You optimistic for the future of transportation?
Definitely optimistic. I think, like Sarah just hinted on, I think the newer generation is coming into leadership positions and whatnot, and these newer ideas.
I think, Daniel, you're breaking up a bit. We're optimistic, but not so much about his wireless connection, huh? But and we are out of time, gonna need to wrap it up there. Thank you all so much. That was superb. I wish we had another hour or a couple hours. A couple of you said, you know, let's keep going, let's nerd out on this. We'd love that, but you know, to all four of you, just really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Andy, thank you again for all 12 episodes and for putting a wrap here on season 2. And thanks to all of our participants out there and for the great questions that you lobbed in here too. Really appreciate it. Have a great holiday. Stay safe out there. Do good transportation, do good projects. And we'll see you back in February for a start of season 3, the next conversation. Andy, back to you for any closing remarks.
All right, thanks, Joe. Again, like I said at the beginning, we'll be sending out a link for everybody to get their PDH form for this. You'll find the recording for this one in case you have any coworkers who missed it. You'll find that up on our YouTube page like I plugged at the beginning, probably sometime next week. Again, thank you for everybody who's been attending these for the last couple of years. We've really been pleased with the attendance at all these and the engagement, people sending in questions. We really appreciate it. And again, I want to offer my thank you to our panelists as well. It's really been a pleasure getting this together with all 4 of you. So, and with that, thank you everybody for coming, and we hope to see you again down the line.
Take care, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.